Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we continue on with the story of Rostam. Zal now leads his armies against Afrasyab. Then from the back of an elephant he threw a pebble in a goblet as a sign to mount, and he gave a shout that could be heard for miles. The din of drums and the blare of bugles mingled with the sounds of Indian bells and the trumpeting of elephants. The day of judgment seemed to have come to Zavalistan, as if the earth were crying out to its dead, "Rise!" Rostam led the army, followed by the land's experienced warriors. It was springtime as they set out, and the world was filled with blossoms and flowers. Afrasyab learned of Zal's approach, and then on he could neither rest nor eat in his anxiety. He led his army toward the river at Ray, where the marshy reed beds are. The Persian army left the desert and made for the battlefield until only 2 parsangs separated the two sides. Zal called a council of his experienced advisers and said to them, "You have seen the world and are wise in its ways. We have drawn up our army here and hoped for a favorable outcome. But we are not of one mind as we were, and this is because the throne lacks a king. Everything is unsure now, and the army has no leader. We need someone of royal lineage to take his place on the throne and bind on the belt of authority. A priest has told me of such a man, one who possesses the royal far, and whose good fortune is still young. This is Kay Qobad, who is descended from Feraydun. He's an imposing man, wise and just." Then Zal turned to Rostam and said, "Take your mace now, and throw back your shoulders. Choose a group of companions and ride quickly to the Albazor Mountains. Greet Kay Qobad respectfully, but do not delay your return. You must be back here in 2 weeks, so do not rest for any reason along the way. Say to him, the army is asking for you, and has prepared the royal throne in your honor." Quick as the wind, Rostam, bound on his belt, set up to fetch Kay Qobad. He brought him to Zal during the night, saying not a word to anyone about his arrival, and Zal sat with him and his advisers for a week, discussing what should be done. On the 8th day of the ivory throne was made ready, and the royal crown suspended above it. Kay Qobad seated himself there and placed the jeweled crown on his head. The chieftains were gathered, men like Zal and warlike Karin, Kerdad, Keshvad, and Barzin, and they scattered jewels over the newly crowned king. He listened to what they had to say about Afrasyab and reviewed his troops. On the following day, the noise of preparations was heard from the royal pavilion, and Qobad led his army out. Rostam put on his armor, and the dust he made raised, and it seemed like a maddened elephant. The ranks of the Persian army marched to war, ready for bloodshed. One wing was led by Mehrab, the king of Kabul, and the other by Ghazdaham. Karin was in the center, together with Keshvad, the breaker of armies. Zal followed him with Kay Qobad, and it was as if there were fire on one side of him and wind on the other. In front of the troops, the Kaviana banner fluttered, dyeing the world scarlet, yellow, and purple, like a ship waved on a wave above the Sea of China. The plains and mountain slopes were a mass of shields, and swords glittered like torches from end to end. The world was like a sea of pitch over which twinkled 100,000 candles. You would think the sun would lose its way with the squeal of trumpets and din of the army. Once battle was joined, Karin was involved in every charge, sometimes riding to the left, sometimes to the right, everywhere eager for bloodshed. When Rostam saw how he fought, he went to his father and said, "Tell me what position the evil Afrasyab keeps during the battle, and what does he wear? Where does his banner flutter above the troops? Is that shining purple banner his? I will grasp him by the belt today and drag him down from his saddle." Zal answered, "Listen to me, my son. Look after yourself today. That Turk is a fire-breathing dragon in combat, a cloud that rains down disaster. His banner is black, as is his armor. His arms are encased in iron, and his helmet is of steel. All the surfaces of his armor are iron and chased with gold, and his black banner is affixed to his helmet. Keep yourself safe from him, because he is a brave man, and fortune favors him with victory." Rostam said. Don't trouble your soul about me. The world's creator is my ally, and my heart, my sword, and my arm are my refuge. Then, as the trumpet sounded, Rostam urged his brazen-hoofed Rakish toward and went to Afrasyab, caught sight of him. He paused in wonder, an immature youth. He said to his warriors, "Who is that dragon who has escaped from his bonds? Who is he? I don't know his name." One of his men replied, "That is Zal's son. Can't you see that he has come here with Sam's mace? He's young and eager to win a name for himself, like a vessel lifted high on the wave." Afrasyab went ahead of his army, and when Rostam saw him, he gripped his thighs against Raksh and lifted his heavy mace to his shoulders. As he drew level with Afrasyab, he brought his mace crashing down on the king's saddle, then reached out and grasped at his belt, lifting from him his leopard skin saddle. He wanted to take him back to Qobad as a trophy from his first day of battle, but his strength and the weight of Afrasyab between them was too much for the belt, which split so that Afrasyab's head lay in the dirt, and his cavalry quickly gathered about him and hid him in the dust that it sent up. When the king slipped out of his grasp like this, Rostam bit the back of his hand in anger. "Why," he said, "didn't I tuck him under my arm instead of hanging onto his belt?" Bells rang out from the elephants' backs, and the din of drums could be heard for miles. And they broke the good news to Qobad that Rostam had broken the center of the Turks' army. They said, when Rostam reached the Turkish king, his black banner disappeared. Rostam grasped him by the belt and flung him down to the ground, so that a cry of consternation went up from the Turks. Qobad sprang to his feet, and his army surged forward like a sea, whipped up by the wind. Everywhere was the sound of weapons clashing, the glitter of daggers, the shock of wood against armor. Protected by their golden helmets and golden shields, men's heads became dazed by the shock and the din of blows. It was as if a cloud had rained vermilion down by magic, staining the earth with red dye. 1,160 brave warriors were killed at a stroke, and the Turks fled before the Persians, retreating to Damgon, from where they made their way to Oxus, sick at heart and weary, filled with rumors and reproaches, their armor shattered and their belts loosened, unheralded by trumpets or drums, bereft of their strength. From the river bank, Afrasyab went to his father in despair. His tongue filled with words, he said, "Exalted king, you sinned when you looked for vengeance in this way. First, no one in the past ever saw great kings break their word. And Iraj's seed has not been eradicated from the land, and no antidote has been found for this poison. When one goes, another takes his place, and the world will not remain without a leader. Qobad has come forward and placed the crown on his head, and has opened up a new way to warfare. And a horseman has appeared of Sam's race. Zal named him Rostam. He came forward like a hideous monster, and the ground seemed scorched by his breath. He attacked everywhere, striking with his sword and mace. The air was filled with the sound of his mace's blows, and my soul was not worth a fistful of dirt before his might. He shattered our army, and no one in the world had ever seen such a wonder. He caught sight of my banner, and brought his mace down on my leopard skin saddle. Then he grasped at my belt and lifted me up as if I weighed no more than a mosquito. My belt split, and I fell from his grasp to the ground, and my men dragged me away from him. I see no alternative to making peace, because your army cannot withstand his onslaught. The lands which Feraydun bestowed on Tur have been given to me, and you should renounce this ancient longing for revenge. You know that being told about something is not the same as seeing it. Something is always lacking when you only hear about a subject. War with Iran seemed like a game to you, but this has been proven to be a hard game for your army to play. Consider how many golden helmets and golden shields, how many Arab horses with golden bridles, how many Indian swords and golden scabbards, how many famous warriors Qobad has ruined. And worse than this, your name and reputation, which can never be restored. It has been destroyed. Don't think of past resentments. Try to be reconciled with Kay Qobad. If you decide on any course of action, armies will converge on you from 4 directions. From one side, Rostam, a blazing sun against whom there is no defense, will attack. From another, Karen, who has never looked on defeat. From a third, Keshvad, with his gold diadem, who had attacked Amal. And from a fourth, Mehrab, the lord of Kabul, who leads Zal's armies. The king of the Turks' eyes filled with tears as he listened in silence to Afrasyab's words. He told a scribe to bring paper and ink and made for musk. The calligraphy of the letter this man wrote was so beautiful that it was worthy of a master, and it was decorated with colors and images. Bashang dictated, "In the name of the Lord of the Sun and the Moon, who has bestowed authority on us, may his blessings be on the soul of Feraydun, who is the warp and weft of our ancestry. If in his ambition for the crown and throne, Tor acted evilly against Iraj, and there is much to be said. Their quarrel must now be put to rest. Manucher has taken revenge for what happened to Iraj, and Feraydun showed us the true way when he divided the lands into separate realms. We should commit our hearts to this division and not ignore the customs and wisdom of our ancestors." At that time, Tertia's imperial tents were pitched in Oxiana, and the river Oxus marked the border. Iraj did not covet this area. He was given the land of Persia by Feraydun. If we break this agreement and go to war, we make life hard for ourselves. We wound ourselves with our swords and provoke God's wrath, so that we shall inherit nothing, neither in this world nor in the world to come. We should respect the division that Feraydun made between San, Tor, and Iraj, and renounce all thoughts of vengeance, for these lands are not worth the disasters we have brought on ourselves. Our heads have grown as white as snow, and the ground has been dyed vermilion with cyanide blood. But in the end, a man owns only the earth in which he lives. 5 cubits of ground are all we inherit. Linen covers us, and we lie in the grave. Ambition's door leads to sorrow and suffering, and our hearts remain heavy while we live in fleeting world. If Kay Qobad will accept our terms, if his wise mind will incline to justice, none of our men will think even in their dreams of crossing the Oxus, and the Persians will not come here except to bring greetings and messages of peace. In this way, our 2 countries will live prosperously and happily." The king sealed the letter and dispatched a detachment of men to take it to Kay Qobad. The messengers handed over the letter and also spoke at length. Kay Qobad answered, "We did not attack first. It was Tur who committed the first crime by destroying Iraj. And in our own time, Afrasyab crossed the Oxus and invaded Iran. You have heard what he did to King Nozar, so that even the beasts of the field grieved for him. And the way he acted with the wise Ogruus was not worthy of a chivalrous man. If you regret these evil acts and will renew our treaties, I harbor no ambitions or desire for revenge, since I am prepared to leave this fleeting world. I grant you your side of the Oxus in the hopes that Afrasyab will be content with this." And he wrote out a new treaty, planting a tree in the Garden of Greatness. But Rostam said to him, "Your Majesty, do not look for reconciliation in place of war. Peace is not what they deserve. Let them see what I can do with my mace in their land." The king replied, "I have never seen anything better than justice. Bashang is Feraydun's grandson, and his son have had enough of warfare. A wise man should not seek to be underhanded or unjust. I have written a charter on silk granting you Zosand over Zalvistan, as far as the Sea of Sind. May you wear the crown and sit on the throne there, illuminating the world. Gave Kabul to Mehrab, and keep your spear tips poisoned, for whenever there is a kingdom, there is a warfare, however great the realm may be." He placed a golden crown on Rostam's head and a golden belt about his waist as a sign that he gave these territories in his keeping. Rostam kissed the ground before him. Then Qobad said, "May the throne never be without Zal. The world is not worth one of his hairs, and he serves to remind us of the great men of the past." He sent Zal clothes of royal cloth of gold, and a belt and crown set with rubies and turquoises. On 5 elephants they placed howdahs, set with turquoises that glittered more splendidly than the waters of the Nile, and draped the howdahs in cloth of gold. Qobad sent Zal treasure the like that which no man has ever seen, with a message: "I wish to send you a more splendid present, and if I live a long life, I will see that you want for nothing in this world." He distributed suitable gifts to Karin, Keshvad, Barzan, Karad, and Pulad, and these included gold and silver coins, swords, shields, crowns, and belts. Then he set out for Pars, where the key to all his treasures lay. His palace was in Es-Tekar, where the Kainad kings ruled in glory. The world paid him homage as he ascended the throne, ruling with wisdom and splendor and according to custom. He said to his nobles, "From end to end, the world is mine. And if an elephant fights with a mosquito, this is a breach of justice and faith. I want nothing but righteousness in the world, because to provoke God's anger will bring want to our land. Ease comes from effort, and wherever there is water and earth, there is my treasure. The cities and armies are mine, and my kingdom depends on the army. Live safely, protected by the Lord of the world. Be wise and live at peace. May those who have wealth enjoy it and share it, and be grateful to me that I enable them to do this. And whoever is hungry and cannot feed himself by his labor, my court will be his pasture, and I will welcome all who come to me." Then he remembered the example of past heroes, and made the world flourish with his justice and generosity. In this way he lived at peace for 100 years. What kings have there been in the world who can compare with him? He had 4 wise sons. His first was Kay Qobad, the second Kay Arash, and the third Kay Pashin, and the fourth Askas. When he had reigned for 100 years, his strength began to wane. He knew that death was near, and that the green leaves of his life had withered. He summoned Qobad and spoke to him of justice and generosity. He said, "I am ready for my last journey. Lower my coffin into the ground and take your place on the throne. This throne that passes from us before we know, and whose servants are without wisdom. I feel I am that man who came so happily with his companions from the Albaraz mountains. If you rule justly and righteously, you will be on a journey to the heavens, and if greed and ambition snare your mind, you will be unsheathing a dark sword that will be used against you." He finished speaking and then departed from the splendid world, exchanging his palace for a coffin. This is the world's way, which raises us from the dust and disperses us on the wind. And that is where I finish my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more, much more. Until then.